Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Pokémath. We're now at episode 23 and, I'm back with another panel for you, or another interview to say. And today I've been joined by three very, very accomplished players, each a very different type of player I believe, but we're here to hear or talk about today about the differences between playing online versus actually playing, well, real life tournaments. And I already apologized for shitty camera quality. I really need a different setup, but at least the sound should be okay today. And, well, with this introduction of online events being the new norm, at least until COVID lifts again, we have seen a lot of different events take the rise. We have seen a lot of other alternative formats being played, and simply just seeing a huge variety of things appear online, and especially the different types of formats and tournament structures. I think that's where we should start. So normally we just have our standard expanded and we have our standard round times as we see at any tournament out there, depending on whether you play best of one or three, of course. But now we see a lot of other things, and I think the best place to start here will be, well, at least on my screen it's down below. So I would like to ask Stéphane, do you have anything you would like to add in on this whole new world of possible tournament formats?
Yeah. So I think what's very interesting is that since we're all stuck playing at home, where as you said, different types of tournaments have emerged, and I think the main the main difference is you have the usual tournaments, which are live events. You play a bunch of rounds in a row, maybe over 2 days for the bigger ones, and you have tournaments that are in a that takes a longer time, where you play one round every day or every few days. And I think this is interesting because the different types of players can play different events. If you don't have if you cannot have a lot of time in one day, but you can afford 1 hour or two every day to play a match, then you can play these longer tournaments. And if you don't want to play every day, but you can really focus your take a weekend to play a big regional style event, then you can play the first type. I know that I've been playing a lot of the second type of tournaments, the 24-hour per round tournaments. So my answers for the rest of the interview will be focused on this, because that's basically what I'm doing. Every day I play like 3 or 4 matches in these kind of tournaments. And what I like is that they usually, best of 3. There's no timer, so you can take longer to think about your plays. And also, what's nice is that since you basically decide like when you play during the day, you can people from everywhere in the world can play in the in the same tournaments without having to stay up all night to play like some Japanese players do for our events or stuff like this.
Oh, thanks for your very elaborate answer. Anybody who wants to add anything to this? I'll take.
I guess I can add a little bit. I've also played some of the 24-hour tournaments, and at the start I mostly played them because I really like that there's no round timer and you can play best of 3 and finish 3 matches always. So that's really using the we are not limited by having to need a venue or something like how IRL tournaments used to be. You can just schedule a time and play a best of 3. But I also think that there is a little bit of inconvenience when your time zones matter a lot, because these 24 hours tournaments, you play around every day. So every day you have to schedule a time, and often with people in different time zones. I think it's really cool that you get to play against more international people. I think that's a great benefit of online. But even with the 24-hour tournaments, it kind of can become difficult to schedule a match every day, at least for me. Like I did it like 3 or 4 times, like just every week scheduling a match. But a lot of the time when you play against Americans, they can play like after 6 p.m. their time, and then it's like 12 here or even later. So it has like benefits. I think the untimed round time is really cool. I think they also did it in the Players Cup top 256, right? That the rounds are like not really timed. I think that it is a benefit, like in the second one.
Yeah, I don't know if the rounds were untimed. I mean, at the very least, you use the timer from TCGO, so
Yeah,
we
there's
had
still
to
gonna be
enable a
a
timer,
cap.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think indeed there's a lot of ups and downs here in terms, and it's true that we can kind of bring the community together a little more in the sense that, well, you can play against Americans much easier now, or Japanese people, or whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. You play way more against people from all over the world, against Brazilian players, against Americans, against Japanese, against Australians. That's a benefit, I would say.
It's a quite interesting aspect of this, and another aspect that's been up for discussion quite a lot, especially when we played, say, the Players' Cup, for instance, is the whole discussion whether or not we should have open deck lists, and that's definitely a major change compared to our typical IRL tournaments. Now that the standard is open deck list, and I was thinking, well, Tor, do you have any thoughts on this whole open deck list thing?
Well, it's probably the easiest way to make sure that people don't cheat and actually just change a couple cards so they match the matchup they are up against better, right? I mean, that's just the basis of the whole concept that we have to use it, right? And why most online tournaments do take advantage of that. But since some that don't, and that might also be because this is mainly just for fun, right? There's not much big prizes on the line in most of these events, so like some of them can afford not having open deck lists as well. But like most of them, especially those with some prizes on the line, usually have open deck list. So there is, there's more incentive to cheat basically if there is a lot of prizes on the line.
How do you think it actually impacts the game itself? That you, for instance, can see your opponent's deck list before the game even starts?
Yeah, obviously that's a big deal, right? Because as far as technical gameplay goes, you can do a lot of things different if you know all the 60 cards in your opponent's deck list or not. Like right from the get-go, knowing the matchup, you can pick a different starting Pokemon if you have multiple in your opening hand. You can choose to play around Crushing Hammers or not, which is a pretty big deal because it's really random which decks that have them and which that don't. Say you play an ADP deck, you start with Water and Metal Energy. If you play against Hammers, you always attach the Metal. If you don't play against Hammers, you always attach the Water to play around Marnie again. So that's also a really big deal that could change the outcome of a lot of games. So open deck lists and the closed deck list definitely impact the games a lot. And I normally think that the more information you give the players, the better it is. So I kind of like open deck lists because I can take advantage of knowing everything, like knowing all the 60 cards and do plays I normally otherwise could not. So I usually like to think it's a good thing, but it also lessens the impact of surprise tech cards, and that's also kind of fun part of the game. So I'm a little bit split on it. It both has positive and negatives.
I assume Sander has something to add on this here, especially when Tor touched about the surprise tech cards or a lot of one-offs, say, and.
I think open deck lists. I think it's really interesting because you do get more data. I think it changes the skill set that gets tested a lot. I think being able to use a lot of, you get a lot of data, you get a lot of information, accurately using it to your advantage is more important. I think with closed deck list, there was also like kind of skill of maybe you can see your opponent making a line and you can kind of reverse engineer that maybe he does or doesn't have a certain card in his deck or in his list, or maybe if he stops playing for a certain out, you can think, oh, well, maybe he doesn't play the fourth switch, so maybe that's why he's playing like this. You kind of have this skill of you don't have perfect information, so you kind of have to piece together your information, and often that's not, you don't get like you don't see it directly, but you can kind of get you can know what they would do if they would have a certain card, and if they don't play for something, then maybe they don't even have the cards.
I can
But
imagine. Yeah.
yeah, but I think also there are some definite benefits of open deck lists as well. I think it's maybe yeah, you could say it gives a more fair result because you don't randomly lose because your opponent has some super strange tag that would not work if you would know about it. I think one thing that is maybe interesting to note is in Magic they use open deck lists even for like the IRL tournaments, and that is because when you get like streamed, you often have this thing where if you play on stream, then people can kind of put together your entire deck list, and then maybe later on you play against someone and he knows exactly what you're playing because of this. I think this discussion was already sometimes like maybe it's a disadvantage to play on stream, although usually people uh, regard the benefits of playing on stream as higher than the downside. But I think that's why in Magic they do in top 8. They already used to, even in like IRL paper events, they just give the complete 75 of your opponent, just because some people might have a disadvantage because they played on stream earlier. And it's also because then the coverage team can actually discuss the deck lists without, giving a huge disadvantage to the players that they show the deck lists of. Like when you watch like the ICs when they did them, they have like the cookie cutter deck lists that they kind of show sometimes on stream. But if all deck lists are open, you can just show every deck list, and the coverage team can also prepare in advance. Like it's not like they cast a match and then they see the deck list for the first time as they are talking, but they can just look up deck lists a bit, and they can show deck lists earlier because everything's open anyway. So there are some benefits to open deck lists even in IRL tournaments, I would say. And there are it's definitely very different. I think the biggest deficit is that if you have something, very unique, then you don't have the surprise factor. But on the other side, you can also argue that having that factor is not the most legit way to begin with to gain an advantage. So I think I think the most important thing I think is that it does change the skill set, and when you are preparing for a tournament, then you have to take that into account.
I think there's a lot of valid points here, and I also know that there's a lot of things that, for instance, now you can bluff about and cannot bluff about. Like, for instance, you could
Yeah,
play as if you have a certain card in your deck, but now your opponent would know.
yeah. I don't
But
know. I
I,
have some pretty funny anecdotes about how games would be completely different if they were played with open deck lists. I mean, it's kind of obvious that games would be very different, as Tort already said. Like even for example, like the finals that me and Tort played in Germany. I'm not sure which city it was.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know Tort's exact list, so I didn't know that he was only playing one switch because he was playing the Shedinya line, and obviously there were some cuts to be made. So when you're playing, you kind of have to kind of figure out like what exactly is still in, what exactly isn't. It kind of is its own, you kind of have to balance it for yourself. And I think the when you play with open deck lists, the risk taking gets way more clear. I think if you are just very good at the risk taking management, then open deck list will benefit you a lot. And if you're better at kind of assessing, kind of feeling the situation, and kind of knowing what the standard counts are, and maybe kind of trying to discover what your opponent is playing, then closed deck lists are, maybe more advantageous.
I want to take the opportunity here to actually elaborate a bit on the discussion about bluffing and things that you can and cannot do online. For instance, now when you play online, when you're playing against another opponent face to face, the bluffing element kind of disappears. I think, like suppose you have a really good opening hand, but you don't want to show it. Should your opponent Marnie or well go a little step back? Should they N or not N or whatnot? And I thought this would be a nice question to go and ask Stéphane at this point here, like the whole psychological game that goes on now when you play IRL. You don't really have that anymore, do you, when you play online?
I actually think it doesn't matter that much IRL either, to be honest. I mean, sure, sometimes you like you have to appear very confident, even though your opening hand is terrible, because you want your opponent to marny you because you don't have anything. So you play as if nothing, like you play your first turn as if it's you had a good hand, but you can like that's kind of the same online. And if you really want to try bluffing, you can always use the little emotes, like you put this little sad face when you actually have a great hand, so your opponent doesn't stamp you or something. But honestly, I think in most games, IRL in real tournaments, I think that most of the times there's like bluffing, the psychological aspect doesn't play a big role. Um, so I don't think that's a big change or anything. But maybe I'm just the one who's very bad at bluffing, so I don't realize it plays a role. I don't know if you guys have other opinions about it.
What about you, Tord? Do you bluff your opponent a lot IRL?
I guess IRL, I can say I do that. Definitely gotten out of a lot of tricky situations by making my opponent question the strength of my hand, I think. But online, it's definitely really hard. You can't really see your opponent, you can't really interact much, and the emotes are kind of only used for BM, so it's a little more tricky online for sure.
Yeah, but it's there's a lot of cool things going on here, and like I can only say from my own experience, I've been both on the receiving end on a God sent Marnie, or a very annoying N or whatnot. I guess we all have tried that. But now I want to take the discussion a little further. So you're supposed now you're sitting at home, you're participating in say the Players Cup. You're sitting there and okay, today I gotta play a lot of rounds because well, my plan is to go all the way. That's at least what I hope. And compare that to when you're sitting and playing 9-round regional or IC. There's a fatigue factor playing in here, I think. And I wonder what you guys think about this. Whether, there's a different type of fatigue if you're sitting at home in your sweatpants or you're sitting out at the event, really focused at the table there and you don't have, distractions or all these kind of things. I wonder if Tord would elaborate a bit on this or have any thoughts about it.
I mean, obviously, it's going to be less stressful playing from your home than actually going to IRL tournament. There's a lot of things you don't have to do. You don't have that long travel, that long flight. You don't have to check into a hotel or mess with your list with your friends the night before, getting all the cards from a vendor the same day, all that jank that people usually use all their time on. So you don't really have to do all the practical stuff. You can just casually wake up, put on your pajamas, and eat some breakfast while you play the first round, like whatever, right? So I would assume it's definitely a lot less stressful for most people to do this online, unless you're very technically challenged, I guess. But like for most people, it should be much easier to just do this from home, I think.
But what about distractions? And what about distractions when you're sitting at home?
I mean, I guess that depends on your home. Like personally, I don't have many distractions around me, but if you live with a lot of other people, that could definitely distract you, right? Or if it's just a lot of things going on. But I think that's very individually as well. Personally, I have a lot less distractions here than IRL, but some people could be living with a lot of other noisy family members or friends or roommates, whatever, that could distract them, maybe even more than events. But I think you're trying to getting at that there's going to be more distraction at an event, right? Because there's so many people in just a hall. So
I think it depends on. It may depend on who you ask. I don't know if I sit at an event. I have I feel this distraction element when I'm at home more. And that's especially as you point out that, well, other noisy family members, for instance, or you have notifications popping up or whatever, and you're sitting out at an event and you can kind of go in a bubble. Like, I don't know what you
I
guys
kind of go in
think
the
about that.
bubble like both places, but that's just me. I'm really unsure how it would be for most people, but I'll just try to find your own bubble, I guess, regardless where you are.
Do you have any? Do you have anything to add on this, Sander? Maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I think it's like Tord said, way more exhausting to go to the IRL events. I think that also kind of makes it more of a factor. Like playing 14 rounds after you've like traveled and like staying at some hotel, and you kind of have this like in the later rounds, it really matters if you're capable of taking good care of yourself, if you are kind of have to use your energy wisely, sort of. I think that's more of a factor, but that's basically just because it's like more difficult to like how to say. It's more of like a limiting factor, and you kind of have to deal with it. Everybody has to deal with it, and being able to deal with it better can actually benefit you. So I wouldn't say that it's a positive. I think online it's way more relaxed, and
It's like one of those outer factors that is not really a part of the game itself, but it is part of the game, right?
You kind of have to deal with life while you're at the event, like all that stuff. Sometimes you have to navigate through some city in like a foreign language that you don't even fully understand and stuff like that. You kind of have to figure out everything.
Or if your name is Sander, you need to find your cup of coffee in the morning before you even can function throughout the day.
Exactly. But I do also think that, at least for me, it's easier to get into the zone when you're at an event, because it's everything. Yeah, it's kind of like you're away from home. You're just at some venue at some other place with just people you know, and it's you're kind of separated from your daily life, and you just kind of zone in on this tournament. And for me, it's actually easier to focus, but I think it's definitely different for everyone. Like I can also see how maybe if you're super comfortable at home, then you can also just really get into the zone at home. It's probably different for everybody.
Yeah, my own perspective on this is, I like you made some very good points, but maybe both of you. But I think it's easier for me to get distracted when I'm playing at home, because you're on your computer and maybe you have other stuff going on. Maybe you have Discord open. You're also talking with friends, checking on their results. So things like this. So sometimes you might be doing, not even realizing, you might not be totally focused on TCGO. And personally, I mean, I know a lot of people, myself sort of included, who have more trouble, focusing on TCGO than on a real game. And another thing that goes with this is when you travel to a regional, to an event, something, it's tiring if you arrive very late in the evening because that was the only plane that you had, and then you had to find the right bus or train or something to get to the venue and find your hotel. And like there can be a lot of factors, a lot of very complicated things that can happen, and sometimes you just get to bed at 2 a.m. and then you have to wake up early and find your cars and stuff. So this is really a factor. But on the other hand, when you travel to a different country, sometimes a different continents to play, you're really like you already invested a lot in this event. In terms of time, also in terms of money, usually. So you're gonna be more focused on this. You're not gonna get distracted by something while you're playing. You're like, okay, well, I'm at this regional, so I'm focusing on this 100%. And so yeah, you said it was easier to get in the zone during an IRL event, and I think I'm just like, for the same reason, it's the same. When I'm during the tournament, I'm gonna focus 100%. I'm gonna have a lot of energy for this, and then after round 9 is over, then okay, get super tired and need some rest. But I think during the event, personally, I get a lot of energy to really stay in it. And also, there's another last thing, which is that sometimes the time for online events can be a bit difficult because if you're playing a regional type event that's organized by people in the US, maybe it's gonna end, instead of finishing at like 10 p.m. or something. It's gonna finish at 3 a.m. in Europe. So when you actually play your last game, you are very tired. Sander, I mean, you played the finals of the
Yeah, it was
online
like,
championships
it was like
this summer. What
yeah.
time was it? 3 a.m., 4 a.m., something like
yeah,
that.
3:30
Yeah.
in the end. Yeah.
That's brutal. That's
Yeah.
the time where we all should
Well-
just be sleeping, I guess.
Yeah.
At that point, it does become kind of comfortable that at least you're at home, right? You can just
At that point, you can just roll over and sleep. I completely can imagine that.
Yeah.
Like,
I think I want to. One thing that Stefan said is that he gets a lot of energy from like being at the place and from traveling. I think that's also seeing all the people. Yeah, that they're kind of going through the same thing. You kind of get energy from each other. Like even if traveling is exhausting, you're traveling often with other people, and when you're at the event, you see all these other players that are also trying to do the same thing as you, and that gives you a lot of energy as well. And when you're at home, just sitting on your sitting at your desk playing the game, you only see like you only see PTCO. You don't really see the other people. So
Yeah.
I can
Also, if
definitely
it's-
agree that you get energy from going to the events as well as it being exhausting.
Also, if it's like round 9 and you're in a win and in, you're gonna have your friends cheering for you, saying, "Okay, go
Yeah.
get them. You
Yeah,
can do it. You're gonna win."
you
So
can-
you
and-
feel more motivated.
And when you lose, you can share your top stories to everybody.
Yeah.
And
Aw.
be like, "Oh, I was
Yeah.
so unlucky," and stuff. Yeah, you get to vent a bit more as well.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
different.
any good event has a lot of ranting and that you've been unlucky because, of course, every time you lose, it's only because you've been super unlucky. You prize all kinds of stuff. Your opponent flip hit on all the crushing hammers or whatever. That's
Yeah.
always
Or they
the
played
case.
ATP.
Sure. Or you price all your welders. That also makes you lose. I know that from experience. I want to take up on a point that both actually Tord mentioned a little bit when he said like before an event you run around to vendors, get all that jank done, and Stefan again mentioned in the sense that you are very invested into going in tournaments. Like there's this whole barrier of entry discussion also now. Like you could, it would be very reasonable to say now when everything is online, like is it easier for to get into play or get all the cards you need or be able to play any deck you want? What do you guys think about this?
I mean, the online cards just has a lower cost than the IRL cards, right? It's much easier to buy some code cards instead of real life packs. They cost less, right? And you get more cards. So I guess that in that way the entry is definitely lower, right? And you also don't need to have money for flights or hotel or anything, which is also a pretty big deal for a lot of people. Like it's quite a lot of money. It's a lot of time investment and money investment and everything. So it's definitely easier to like go to events from online. That shouldn't be a big question, right?
Yeah, that's a pretty something that's interesting with this era of online tournaments is that there are a lot of players who we didn't really see before that because they some were new players or something, but some people just didn't have the time or the money or were not in a convenient place, to travel to regionals. There are some places where to go to the nearest regional, you still have to take a plane, and but it's a big commitment for a weekend. And some people have jobs, they have families, they don't have the time. But now that everything is from home, then they can find this. So there are more. I guess there's all this category of players that we didn't see outside of
Yeah.
local events before that get added to the game.
It's kind of interesting that there are like players that only play PTCGO that don't even play IRL. Like I know for certain that there are players like that, and it's kind of, for them it's like a great opportunity that we now have more online tournaments.
Yeah.
I do think the barrier of entry is lower, but I think maybe it's also a bit harder to get in contact with people to give you advice when you're starting out. Maybe that is. But maybe that's also still possible because you have the entire internet and discussion forum and Discord and stuff that you can get into contact with. If you're just starting out and you're playing IRL, it's easier to talk to someone at like a league or something. But
yeah, IRL is easier to get into contact with local players. The other thing is that like the flip side is that there are some people who started playing tournaments online because like this year, because now there's a lot of online tournaments, and who are like, okay, that's actually fun when they get into contact with other players because they meet other players during the tournaments. And now I know, for example, people in a French Discord server who only played online, who still only play online, but who are considering getting into IRL after when tournaments start again, because they were like, okay, competitions are fun then, and I met other people who I can talk to during these events, and we all cheer each other on. So yeah, I'm gonna go to the nearest league when they come back, and so on. So I think it's a good opportunity to grow the game, including the IRL game later on when it all starts again.
And it's like Tord said, it's actually really cheap and easy to get started. You just download the program. It's not that hard to get a functional deck, and there's also a lot of deck lists online that you can kind of get a feel for what is kind of played. So it is easy to get started. You don't have to immediately go to a big regional to play a big tournament, so that's nice.
No, there's definitely the whole thing has changed quite a lot now. When you have like it's all within the reach of your hand now. You don't have to move anywhere. You don't have to go anywhere. Like that's very understandable, and it's also quite cool. So indeed, like basically all of you mentioned here, that we get a lot of new players that we have never seen before, and there might be a benefit down the line that they would then later appear in when we get ERL tournaments back. That would also be very nice. Like because well, if everything is successful, we should hopefully be going back sometime sooner than later, but we don't know. And well, I would like to take the discussion to another point of interest right now. So imagine now people have gotten their decks, people have gotten the program, everything is fine. But now speaking a little about the decks as well, like now when we play online instead versus say ERL, of course, does that have that so far altered your general choice of decks or consideration for what deck you're gonna play, and like why? You want to give a go at this, maybe, Sander?
Well, I mean, I still have a very strong preference for what kind of decks I play. That hasn't truly changed. I still like to play whatever.
But has it been made harder or any easier? Say, let's put it like that.
I think it's kind of difficult to say if it's harder. Maybe I feel like I think one of the things we said earlier is like the fatigue factor. I definitely enjoy it more when I can play super long games and I'm at home and I can relax a bit easier. I think maybe the fatigue factor at tournaments always played. I think for everybody that played control decks plays a big factor. Now maybe when you play it from home, that's less of an issue. But at the same time, a lot of the tournaments, the timing format doesn't really help out. Like you just don't have 40 minutes to finish one game, and sometimes with control decks, that's kind of what you do. You just play one game, and that takes a long time. And in 50-minute rounds, that's fine. But in 30-minute rounds, that's if your opponent kind of also slow plays, then you just don't finish. And for example, the Player Cup qualifiers, then for that one, I definitely have to change my deck completely. Like just using the keys to get points. Like I actually tried playing like Excadrill in the first one, and then I finished. It's like the 8-man tournament with 3 rounds, and I actually got to the finals. But in the first round, I had like 5 seconds left, and in the second round, I had like 2 seconds. It was like at some point you're just clicking through your turns as fast as it's. I mean, for that one, it definitely you would have to change your deck. But I do think you can play control still. I don't think it's impossible or anything.
Yeah, I mean, we saw, like, was it this weekend? There was this big Shield CG/GG Tour events.
Yeah, and in the finals it was. Because and they also play, but that's also one benefit, I think, is that a lot of the top cuts are untimed best of 3s, so you don't have like the entire issue of you're 1-1 and then game 3 you kind of always lose. So I think that is a benefit even. I think some of the tournaments are actually, they benefit control decks. Even, I would say. It's just the best of 30 minutes. That's sometimes an issue. You have to be able to play pretty quick if you want to finish.
But games are usually faster, right? Because all the shuffling that you have to do IRL is automated.
Yeah. It actually kind of depends. Like some things take forever. I think coin flips, maybe a weird example, but like floor chess, that takes just as coin flips, and some animations take a long time. It's kind of weird, but shuffling is like super quick. So that's.
So in terms of the timer, there's some trade-offs here, like also when you play Frostmoth or any ability to have to move a counter or an energy, all these things they take forever online, but of course your shuffling and your setup is done within a few seconds. It's there's definitely something here to go at and not. I was thinking now, so now we see a lot of players, and of course we see a lot of new players, but of course a lot of familiar faces. Well, avatars right now, because that's what we see when we play online, still appear.
On the side note, I think the avatars are so bad. Like I think in general, I think maybe this is a topic that's maybe too much to discuss now, but PTCGO is, it's not the greatest. It's kind of outdated, but they try.
I think we can firmly agree that some updates may be beneficial to the program, but indeed it's not.
I would even say like apart from like that, some things are like programmed poorly, and I think it takes like way too much. I don't think it's programmed very well, but I think even like the interface should be updated, because I think that's also what draws like new people in, just a fluent interface, especially when you're playing online. There's like so much online competition in terms of gaming that it's kind of maybe a lost opportunity that the interface is still. I
also don't think that when they decide PGO in the beginning, they didn't think they're going to have only online events in 2020. I don't think that was the whole idea when they designed this.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one thing is also, do they even make money off PTCGO? You can't really buy in-game cards, right? Like in a lot of digital card games, you can spend money online to get cards. Is that even possible? You have to buy the codes.
Yeah, but I think they earn their money through the codes technically, right? Because the codes come from packs, packs come from them.
Yeah, but it's kind of indirectly. So I also think that's why they don't really have an incentive to, really put a lot of resources. Because if you want to update like PTCGO, you're gonna have to put in some upfront costs, and I just don't think they have the incentive because they are not earning any direct money from it. Also, probably because Pokemon is more of a kids game. Maybe they don't want you to be able to spend money in the client. I think that may also be a factor.
Yeah, I think they don't want them that the young kids they spend on these micro payments. It goes completely nuts. Yeah. They don't want that on them.
Yeah, but I think a lot of other games, because they earn their revenue from microtransactions, they have way more reason to put in a lot of effort into designing a proper game. And PTCGO doesn't really have microtransactions at all. So I think that's also why they are kind of, they don't even want to put in too many resources into improving it. That's what I think, at least.
Well, I can understand the argumentation here. It perfectly makes sense. Like, I don't know, like, the question is also, like, what are the current alternatives out there? So you have PTGO on one hand. I myself have also tried to play in a tabletop simulator. That's also very possible. You can also play TCG1. Or you could even play over webcam and just play, playing cards. And if you ever have tried any of these other outlets?
I mean, TCGO is the best. Yeah. I mean, is like the only good way to play Pokemon online, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely I think it's very functional. It's, you do get the Pokemon experience for sure. Like, also one thing is, I think it's I also kind of like how you get also more information when you play online, kind of, because you can see your deck list, the exact number of cards in your deck. While when you're playing IRL, you kind of have to, guess. You don't count your deck cards every time. You can also check your opponent's discard pile at any time, as often as you like, without interrupting, the flow of the game. So there are definitely some things about PTCGO that I, actually like. it's kind of better than playing IRL. But they're
That's actually really big factors for a control player, right?
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. That's really
You're
important.
you're always checking your opponent's disrepel like a lot.
And deck sizes.
And deck size, and you actually kind of have more accurate information that you can always access. So that's nice.
For sure. I tried all these different methods of playing, but PCGO is still, despite some flaws, of course, the smoothest anyway. So, it's still a good program. It could be better, obviously.
But yeah, so far it's like it's a good platform. But indeed, like we can get from here, like there's improvements to be made. But well, you do get the experience, and well, we are at least able to play still. I guess that's the main point here. Also, we can still play, and it's still reliable to some extent, right?
Also, there's one more small thing I think that I want to touch upon. Like, I think one of the really nice things is I think the limitless tournament side. I think that side is really nicely made. Because at the start, when we started playing online events, we used like some other third-party sites like Battlefy and stuff like that, and it was way more awkward. I think the limitless sites for tournaments, they run really smoothly. Like when you play like a limitless weekly, it feels like a really clean experience. There's no hiccups. You get your matches flow nicely. There's no delays. You don't have to sign up on 3 different sites to get to play. I mean, if you're competitive, of course, it doesn't matter that much, because if you really want to play, it's still convenient compared to going to a normal tournament. But this is I do like that there has been some improvements in the online tournament scene, so that's a positive, I would say.
Yeah, it's definitely the Play Limitless site is definitely a huge. Like, it's great. It's improved things, made it easier for everyone, and like you can see all the deck lists. It's like the way it's integrated with the rest of Limitless is great. You have easy access to the deck list of the past tournament, so it's very easy to see a lot of stuff, a lot of data. It's really a great, like a fantastic resource.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I really did. There's no doubt that they have really moved forward and stepped up and really improved the online experience. And it's also certain that many of these things are come to stay. And we can only look forward to even more improvements. I really think that since we all started this year, it's become a lot better and a lot easier, also for newer players, like pointed out here. That indeed we don't have Battlefly that breaks down like the first limited qualifier back in the day. You can already just think back at that and then look all now how smooth everything is English, but okay. So we're really come a long way, and maybe just maybe like get really official events online maybe in the future. Like the first step is the Players Cup. They also have the Team Challenge. Of course, there's still some flaws that needs to be worked out, but overall, we are taking really significant steps towards like a fully online environment in which that we can actually have, well, real events, I think. But there was one.
The Players kind of like that. The Players Cup is kind of their attempt to make, a big international tournament happening.
They are trying, and it also opened up for different formats. Like before Players Cup, like I don't remember any IRL tournaments having double elimination, for instance. Like that has been just like that's not what we do here. Yeah. We do Swiss plus Top Cup.
Maybe it's not the good time to get into this, because I don't think double elimination bracket is a good format for TCGs at all. Because I think Swiss, there's a reason why we play Swiss, because a matchup, like even if you are like, let's say you are the best player and you have the best deck, there's just some amount of variance that you can't influence, and there's also a lot of matchup dependency. So it's much better to just play a lot of rounds. And if you lose a round, even if you win if you just have a very high win rate, then you're going to be on top, which is how the Swiss system works. But in double elimination, losing early is super punishing, and just winning your first 5 games is super beneficial. Like
this I think is the right time to put in some shameless self-promotion, because made a video where I see Tord beat a lot of Jespers in a double elimination bracket to show how a percentage actually impacts this. So if you haven't seen it, that's the time to go see it, and you can see exactly well, Sander's point being made right there, that if you lose first round, there's a
Yeah, you play like
long way through.
I think if you lose the first round, you have to play you have to win. You have to win 14 times to make top 4. And if you just win everything, you have to win like 7 or 8. I don't remember, but
There's a huge variation in number of rounds you would have to play. Like even now, when you played the Players Cup with 256 players, if you weren't fortunate to say be paired against the one auto loss you have because you choose the best deck, but it loses to one thing, you lose your first round, then you have to win a countless number of rounds to get to your top 4.
Mm.
It's it really impacts the game, I think. But could you maybe we play Swiss usually, and have you considered any? So now I'm just taking something from the top of my head here, but any other formats you've considered maybe? Like any other tournament structures that we could actually try out?
I think Swiss is I think Swiss France plus top cut is basically the ideal for TCGs.
Yeah,
you get a high number of rounds. You get so that's even if some people sometimes you lose a game because of variance, which means basically luck, or because of bad matchups, things happen. But if you have enough rounds, then it's gonna all balance out in the end. And overall, the best players, which means those who played the best and of those who chose the best deck for the event, will will come out on top, and then you have a small top cut at the end, so that you still have some exciting finish. Because otherwise, if it's just Swiss rounds, then there's no finals, there's no big flashy spectacle at the end, which is a bit of a shame.
Now, you pick on something very interesting there, Stéphane, which I want to go into discussion here before we end today's this interview here. You're speaking about good players. Say we have played online for a while now, and of course before that we played offline, like countless of years, obviously. But would you expect that good players offline are automatically good players online, and vice versa, or do you think there's a difference here?
Well, mostly it's basically the same. I think we've seen a lot of people, a lot of great, players who were already recognized to be great from offline events. You've seen them do very well at online events. I mean, I'm not gonna there are countless examples. I think the people who do well online, who we didn't see before that, but who consistently do well online, would also be great offline players for the most part. It's just that maybe they are new to the game, so they didn't play before, or maybe they couldn't go to big events or any stuff like this. But basically, yeah, should be the same people because the skill sets are mostly the same. Again, so it depends a little bit on the type of events, because if it is open deck lists versus closed deck lists, we've already touched on how that requires some different skills sometimes. If you depending of if there's like best of 1, 30 minutes, or if it's unlimited time or whatever, then the time management is going to be different. But overall, playing well, good sequencing, good resource management in a game, knowing how to play each matchup, what to bench, what not to bench, whether you should play this professor's research and discard your hand, or whether you need the resources for the rest of the game, stuff like this. This is the same whether you're playing online or offline, and that's really the core of the game. So I think that overall, good players, people who do well in online events, would usually already did well before that, or will do well when they go back to tournaments, and so on. I think that's like the thing. It's a good thing, by the way. It's pretty good that it's not a completely different game, and that whether we're playing online or offline, it's still the same game, and it matters.
What about you other guys? Do you have any things to add on what Stéphane said here? It's very interesting to hear.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I also think that the technical skills from online play will definitely just transfer over to IRL play, and also vice versa. But as we talked about before, you also have all these other factors. There's IRL factors like the stress and tiredness, all of that, and there's also some technical things that you don't actually have to do on PCGO that you have to do IRL, and that's like one big thing is price checking. Online, you have your whole deck sorted in order, and when you first deck search, you can very easily find all 6 prices in like half a minute, right? If you give it at least some practice. In IRL, that's a lot harder. That's a skill that can take like months, years to actually develop properly and do in time. And like if you want to save time as well, you kind of have to remember it and not write them down. I mean, you could obviously write them down, but like I guess that's different for each person as well. Let's see. Well, there was one more thing. I'll probably get back to it. You can speak some, Sander.
Yeah, definitely agree. Like, I actually, because I often play decks that require a lot of deck checking, I actually put in, some actual effort into having some consistent method to do it. Like, I tend to sometimes play different arts, because when you're deck checking, you're kind of counting some numbers, but if your visual memory is kind of different from your memory when you're actually counting. So when you're deck checking, you can actually just kind of check off some visual reference points, like when you see a certain card, and even if you play a card 2 times, you can play different arts, and then you can kind of get a visual how do you call it, visual key that you recognize, and also count some card numbers at the same time, which is, online it's way easier. You don't have to do much of anything at all. You kind of just go through your deck and you see everything. But yeah, I do think in online versus IRL, I do think there's some nuance to both that would make you maybe better in one or the other. But I think if you are a great online player, you probably you have probably invested enough time, and you already know like the basis of the game, that learning the nuances of the IRL game is going to be pretty easy, I think. So I do think there's a small difference, but I think you can, like when I started playing online, it took me like a couple tournaments to really get adjusted to also, all these differences that we talked about. But I think if you are motivated and if you already spend a lot of time playing, and then I think it's I think you can go from being good at the one to being good at the other pretty easily.
Yeah, technical gameplay is some of what I would value the most in a good player. So obviously we talked about all these other factors as well, but if you're really good online, then you're probably really good offline as well, right? Because as long as you play really well, then
game is
you're gonna do good, right? So
Yeah, the different stuff like checking your price is something you can learn. It's not a real
you can
barrier.
learn all these other things, like the technical gameplay and doing well is the most important factor after all. So
I think this is a good point to also go to one of my final things I would like to ask you before we stop, because now we heard from, well, 3 very accomplished players with 3 different, very, very different styles of playing, I believe. Also come with their takes on IRL versus online. And, well, guys, when do you actually think we're going to be back, IRL again? Any bets?
I don't want to to answer this because I'm not very optimistic.
That's also fine just to say not optimistic.
And I think anything we like, any time we could say, like, it just has the potential of, I don't know, being wrong and being just disappointing. So I'd rather not, be too hopeful and then just be pleasantly surprised when something is announced.
Yeah.
So
like,
no Worlds 2021 maybe.
No. I don't think it's gonna happen.
I'm not very pessimistic. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I think there are probably other priorities and other things that have to happen first. Although I do think it is kind of important, like during this pandemic, to also have some leisure time and have some hobbies that you can still enjoy, because there's obviously also some psychological stress as a result of all the lockdowns. So I think it to some extent it's kind of, it's obviously not the most important thing in the world to have events again, but I think it does have some value, some real value, to have a hobby that you can enjoy and meet people and socialize and stuff like that. So I have no idea when if IRL events are going to happen again, but yeah.
I think from what I get from you guys here, the answer is it's gonna be a while. Let's just, indeed, let's just see when it happens and see when we're gonna be back. But regardless of that, nevertheless, and I'm very, very thankful that you guys took time out of your calendar here to join me today, and also to enlighten everybody here. What is your take on IRL versus online play? So thank you very much for joining us here today. And I hope you guys are keeping your spirits up high and keep playing. And hope to see you back at real life events someday in the future. And until then, take care, guys, and have a good day.
Yeah.
And thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.